I want you to close your eyes for just a second.
Okay.
Picture the absolute peak of a fancy white-collar career.
Wow.
You are in Brussels.
Right.
You're walking down this hallway lined with plush gray carpet. You're wearing a tailored suit. Maybe you're carrying one of those nice leather folios.
The full diplomat look.
Exactly. You are surrounded by the intellectual elite of Europe. People speaking 3-4 languages, discussing international treaties, carbon credits, the future of democracy. It's quiet, it's climate-controlled, and it smells like, I don't know, expensive coffee and ambition.
Yeah, that's the picture of success we're all sold, right? I mean, that is the destination at the very end of the educational conveyor belt.
It really is. Now, I want you to do a hard cut. Just smash cut to 6 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday in the Netherlands.
Quite a pivot.
You are hanging off the back of a massive, roaring garbage truck. You're wearing high-vis orange that is stained with God knows what. It is cold, your hands are freezing, and the smell isn't coffee. It's rotting vegetables and wet cardboard. You are literally hauling other people's filth.
It is just a jarring contrast. And usually in the stories we tell ourselves as a society, that trajectory only moves in one direction.
Right, from the bottom up.
Exactly. You start on the truck to pay for school so you can eventually end up in the parliament. That's the classic upward mobility narrative.
But today, for this deep dive, we're talking about a man who did the exact reverse. He went from the marble halls of the European Parliament to the back of that garbage truck.
Which is wild.
And here is the kicker. He wasn't fired. He didn't have a mental breakdown. Well, not exactly anyway. He didn't get canceled. He chose it.
Yeah.
He literally used an AI prompt to help him escape the elite world.
It's an incredible story. We're talking about Quin Blokzijl, and, you know, on the surface, this sounds like a quirky grass is always greener kind of experiment.
Right.
Or maybe a modern-day Prince and the Pauper. But what he discovered, and what we're going to really unpack today, is actually a massive gaping crack in the foundation of our entire society.
It's terrifying when you actually stop and look at it.
It really is, because this isn't just a biography of a guy who changed jobs. We have to look at this as a case study of a sociological phenomenon known as diploma democracy.
Diploma democracy.
Yeah, it's this idea that our society has become strictly stratified, almost like a caste system, but based entirely on educational attainment.
It sounds so academic when you say it like that, but as we get into Quin's story from our source material today, you realize it literally determines who gets to fall in love, who gets listened to, and who gets to run the world.
Exactly.
And we are basing this deep dive on a really fascinating conversation from the Dutch platform De Nieuwe Wereld, hosted by Toledo Moose. Quin actually sat down with her because he watched a previous discussion they hosted about the gap between the academically educated and the practically educated.
And he basically yelled at a screen, "That is my life."
Literally. So his mission in sharing this story is to map out that invisible trench. Because we talk a lot about polarization.
Oh, constantly.
Left versus right, conservative versus progressive. But Quin's experience suggests the real divide is actually between the theoretical elite, who talk about the world, and the practical workforce, who actually keep it running.
And the scary part is they aren't just disagreeing. They are basically living on completely different planets at this point.
So let's rewind. Let's actually meet Quin Blokzijl, because he didn't start out in a boardroom, and he didn't start on the truck either. Where does a guy like this come from?
He's from Schagen, which is in North Holland. And to really understand his journey, you have to understand the Dutch education system. It's quite unique, and frankly, it can be pretty brutal if you look at it from an outsider's perspective.
Yeah, let's clarify that for everyone listening who might not be familiar. In places like the US or the UK, you generally stay in the same high school stream with all your peers until you're maybe 16 or 18.
Right.
But in the Netherlands, the sorting hat, so to speak, comes out really early.
Extremely early, 12 years old. Yeah. At age 12, you take a test called the CITO test. And based purely on that score, you are split. You either go to the theoretical track, which eventually leads to university, or the practical track, the vocational track, which is called VMBO.
Wow.
And Quin went the practical route. He went from VMBO to MBO, which is vocational college. He actually specialized in desktop publishing and editing, so right from a very young age, he was permanently stamped as practically educated.
I really want to pause on that age 12 thing for a second, because Quin talks about this in the interview, and it is honestly heartbreaking. Just imagine you have a group of friends, right? You're 10, 11 years old. You play soccer together.
You go to each other's birthday parties.
You're a tribe, and then you take this test, and suddenly Half the group goes to the smart school, and half goes to the dumb school.
That's exactly how it's perceived, even if adults pretend they don't say it out loud.
Yeah, it's exactly how it feels to the kids. And it's not just about sitting in different classrooms.
No, the physical separation begins immediately. They bite completely different routes to school, they start wearing different clothes, they develop different vocabularies.
Right.
Quinn mentions that eventually they just stop seeing each other entirely. The social invitations dry up. By the time they are young adults, they are basically strangers living in the exact same town.
So Quinn is on this practical track. He's doing his thing, learning publishing. And then 2020 happens. COVID hits. The world shuts down.
The great equalizer. Everyone is stuck at home. Quinn is just bored out of his mind. He's staring at the walls. And a youth worker basically tells him, hey, there's absolutely nothing to do here. Why don't you try this youth representative thing?
It's the sheer irony of boredom as a catalyst. I mean, if Netflix had just released a better series that month, maybe he never would have ended up in politics.
Truly. But he takes the opportunity. He becomes a youth representative, and he turns out to be incredibly good at it. He eventually chairs a major organization called JOBMBO, which represents students in vocational education across the entire country.
So suddenly, this practically educated kid is thrust into a world he really wasn't supposed to be in. He starts rubbing shoulders with ministers, with policymakers.
He's wearing the suit now.
He's talking the talk. But even as he's rising in this network, he hits what we might call the paper ceiling.
This is where the sociological aspect gets intensely personal. Because we often think of discrimination in terms of race or gender, naturally. But Quinn talks about the stigma of being an MBO graduate, a vocational student, in a way that is really visceral.
Yeah.
And it shows up in the most brutal marketplace of all. Dating apps.
Oh, man, this part of the source material.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be rejected for a job. It's a whole other thing to be rejected for love because of your diploma.
Quinn observed that on apps like Tinder or Bumble, people explicitly state in their profiles HBO plus only, or university graduates only. It is a literal filter.
Wait, really? People actually put that in their bio. Don't talk to me unless you have a master's.
Yeah, explicitly.
Mm-hmm.
Or they just quietly filter by education level in the back-end app settings. Quinn talks about his colleagues on the garbage truck later on. These are guys who are hardworking, funny, fit, decent people.
Yeah.
But they get swiped left instantly. Why? Because the job title says garbage collector or mechanic.
That is just devastating. It basically says to them, you are not worthy of romance because you work with your hands.
Exactly. And it internalizes this profound sense of lower worth. If you are practically educated, you are being told by the romantic market, by the social market, that you are just not eligible for the same connections as the theoretical class.
Right.
It just brutally reinforces that stratification we talked about. You stay in your lane, they stay in theirs.
There's that story about the speed dating event, too. That blew my mind.
Yes, he wanted to go to a speed dating event with some friends. He shows up, he's dressed well, ready to meet people, and he was literally refused entry at the door.
Unbelievable.
The organizers asked for his credentials, and because he wasn't HBO plus, meaning higher professional education or university, they said, sorry, this event isn't for you.
The bouncer at the door of love. That is wild. It's like a VIP club, but instead of buying a bottle service, you need to show your thesis.
It signals that intelligence and basic human worth are only defined by academic paperwork in these circles. But Quinn doesn't like staying in his lane.
No, he doesn't.
He sees this barrier, this paper ceiling, and he decides to break it. Or rather, he decides to completely trick it.
This is my absolute favorite part of the story. I call it the hack. It feels like a scene from a heist movie.
It is a brilliant piece of subversion, honestly.
So let's set the scene for you. Quinn has this massive network now. He's chaired a national youth organization. He has literally debated ministers on television. He knows the political game better than most political science graduates ever will.
Absolutely.
But when he tries to get a real job in that world, specifically at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, he hits a brick wall.
The wall is the HR algorithm. Every meaningful job listing has one requirement in bold letters: HBO or university degree. It didn't matter at all that he had practically done the work of a diplomat as a youth rep. He didn't have the piece of paper.
So most people would stop there, they'd sigh, go back to school for 4 years, accumulate debt, and follow the rules. What does Quinn do?
He realizes the system isn't actually checking for knowledge, it's checking for a status marker. So he logs onto a website for a University of Applied Sciences, an HBO institution. He finds a random course.
Is he going to study?
Not at all. He enrolls, he pays the initial tuition fee. Let's say it's a couple of €100 for the registration. The system processes it. He gets a PDF that says proof of enrollment.
Okay.
He takes that PDF and attaches it to his job application at the ministry. He applies as a student. Because often government jobs have these little loopholes for current students or recent grads. He basically says, look, I'm in the system.
And the ministry.
They see the word university on the document. The gates just swing open. He gets the interview. And because he's actually incredibly competent and charismatic, he aces the interview. He gets the job.
And the degree he enrolled in.
As soon as the employment contract is signed, he logs back into the university portal and unenrolls. He gets his tuition money refunded. He never attended a single day of class.
That is just audacious. Is that even legal?
It's a very gray area,
Yeah.
certainly, but it totally exposes the absurdity of the requirement.
It's a masterclass in exposing the absolute laziness of the system.
Exactly. It proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the degree requirement was a gatekeeping mechanism, not a genuine skill requirement.
Yeah.
He was perfectly capable of doing the job. The ministry, and honestly most modern corporate and government HR departments, they use the degree as a lazy proxy for competence. It's like they're saying, we don't have the time or resources to actually figure out if you're smart or capable, so we'll just check if you jump through this specific hoop that our elite class recognizes. It filters out incredibly capable people like Quin, not because they can't do the work, but because they don't have the stamp.
So he hacks his way into the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in The Hague. He is now officially inside the bubble. He's walking those hallways. What does he actually find in there?
He finds a culture that is almost completely alien to where he came from. He describes a very specific type of person, lifelong ambition, specific mannerisms, a certain way of speaking. These are people who have been groomed for these specific hallways since they were children.
And he's undercover initially. He hasn't told them he's an MBO graduate. He's letting them just assume he's one of them. But eventually, he decides to come out, so to speak. He reveals his educational background to his colleagues. I expected him to say they got angry or felt tricked.
No, and that's almost worse in a way. The reaction wasn't anger. It was sheer confusion. It was a total massive blind spot. The reaction was literally, oh, MBO exists too.
Wow.
It wasn't active malice. It was just that for these diplomats, the vocational world is so far outside their periphery that they genuinely forgot it was an option for human beings to take.
It's like discovering a new species. Oh, you mean the people who fix the lights in here? They have schools too. I thought they just spawned in the basement.
Precisely. It shows how incredibly small their world actually is, despite them working in foreign affairs. But if The Hague was a bubble, Quin's next move took him to the absolute Death Star bubbles, the European Parliament in Brussels.
He levels up from the Dutch ministry to the EU, and he says this was The Hague times 10.
The ivory tower. Here, it's not just regular university graduates, it's the creme de la creme. Harvard, Oxford, the elite French universities like the Sorbonne. The intellectual homogeneity is just off the charts.
I really want to visualize this because he describes the atmosphere so vividly. Gray buildings, long, endless corridors, no daylight. It sounds less like a vibrant center of democracy and more like a very expensive, very dull bunker.
And the social dynamics are incredibly rigid there. Quin is walking around, this guy who learned graphic design at a vocational college, debating complex policy with people who have PhDs in international relations. And when he would tell people, I didn't go to university, their brains would just short circuit.
He describes this glazed look in their eyes.
They could not compute it. The assumption was immediate and, frankly, insulting. When he said, I don't have a degree, the thought process of the person opposite him went, oh, you must work in the cafeteria. You must be here to fix the Wi-Fi. You must be the catering staff.
It's unbelievable. You're wearing the exact same suit. You're in the exact same meeting. You're sitting at the exact same table. But the moment that credential is missing, you are mentally demoted to servant.
And this touches on a really critical point about diversity in these institutions. Brussels prides itself immensely on diversity. You walk down the halls and you see a rainbow. Different genders, different ethnicities, disability representation. It looks like the perfect United Nations brochure.
But Quin calls it a paradox. He says it's basically a trick of the eye.
Right. Visually, it is very diverse. Intellectually, it is a strict monoculture. Everyone thinks the exact same way. Everyone speaks the exact same technocratic language. Everyone holds the same worldviews because they all went to the same three types of elite schools.
He used a specific example that I thought was really fascinating, but we need to be careful unpacking it. He mentioned the blind Muslima.
Yes. His point was very nuanced. He was saying, you could have a blind Muslim woman working in the parliament, and that is a triumph of inclusion, and it is.
Of course.
But if she has the exact same master's degree from the exact same elite school as the white French guy sitting next to her, is there any real diversity of thought happening in that room?
That is the key question.
Yeah.
Are you getting different perspectives on how to actually solve problems? Or just people with different identities reciting the exact same textbook answers?
It's a very valid critique. Are we celebrating surface-level diversity to avoid dealing with the much harder issue of class diversity?
There's this moment he describes where he meets Roberta Metsola, the president of the European Parliament. That's a huge deal. That's the boss. And Quinn, being the disruptor that he clearly is, decides to raise this issue directly with her.
He tells her straight up about the educational exclusion. He says, look, the working class is completely shut out of these buildings. We're creating a massive disconnect with the people we're supposed to represent.
And her response?
She missed the point entirely. She pivoted immediately to geographic diversity. She started complaining that there weren't enough Maltese people working there.
Talk about ships passing in the night. He's talking about a class war, about the 60% of the population that is ignored, and she's talking about national quotas for a tiny island nation.
It perfectly illustrates that these institutions are very comfortable with identity politics, nationality, gender, etc., because those things don't necessarily challenge the underlying meritocratic myth that they base their entire lives on.
Right.
But class, education disparity,
Yeah.
that makes them deeply uncomfortable. Because to address that, they'd have to admit that maybe the best and brightest aren't just the ones with the diplomas. They'd have to admit the system is rigged in their favor.
So Quinn is there. He's in the belly of the beast. But he's miserable. He realizes this quote-unquote dream job is actually kind of soul-sucking. He talks about the lack of tangible results. You write a report about a report and then form a committee to discuss the report.
And he decides he needs out.
Right.
But he doesn't just scroll LinkedIn for another desk job. He goes to an AI.
This is the ultimate modern irony to me. He uses the most advanced technology we have to escape the technological bureaucratic world.
He types into the prompt, what is a job that is outside and is the complete opposite of the European Parliament?
I love that so much. Just get me as far away from here as physically possible.
And the AI, in its infinite wisdom, gives him two answers, construction worker or garbage collector.
And Quinn thinks, garbage collector, perfect.
It really highlights his profound desire for reality. He wanted something tangible. In Brussels, the work is incredibly abstract. It never ends. You never see the final product. On the garbage truck, you pick up a bag, you throw it in the crusher, and it's gone. The work is physically done.
So he makes the switch. He trades the tailored suit for the orange vest. He goes from Brussels back down to Schagen. And the first thing he notices is the vibe shift.
The immense satisfaction of physical work. He talks about feeling done at the end of the day. In office jobs, the mental load follows you home. You're checking emails at dinner. You're worrying about the strategy meeting tomorrow. On the truck, when the route is finished, you are free.
But here's where it gets really interesting regarding how we view intelligence. Because the stereotype, and let's be honest, we all have it somewhere in our brains, is that the diplomat is the smart one, and the garbage collector is, well, simple.
Unskilled labor. That's the cold term economists use for it.
Right. But Quinn says that is absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
He completely challenges the very definition of intelligence based on his time on the truck.
He points out the incredible emotional intelligence, or EQ, of his colleagues on the truck. They notice instantly if he's tired. They pick up on the smallest nonverbal cues. Hey, you're lifting that bin a little slow today, you okay?
Yeah.
Because on a heavy truck like that, if you aren't paying close attention to each other, you get hurt, you get crushed.
Whereas in the diplomatic world,
You can be on the absolute verge of a burnout breakdown, literally shaking from stress at your desk, and your colleague will walk by and just ask if the memo is ready yet. The diplomats, for all their fancy degrees, were often socially blind. They lacked that human radar that the guys on the truck had in spades.
and then there's the way the outside world treats him now. He's seeing society from the back of the truck.
Yeah.
And he notices a very distinct difference depending on the neighborhood he's working in.
This is a painful observation he shares. In normal neighborhoods, working class neighborhoods, row houses, there's real camaraderie. People wave, they say hello, they offer the guys a cup of coffee. But in the wealthy villa neighborhoods,
The people who drive the Teslas and have the, in this house we believe, signs on their lawns,
The residents speak to him slowly.
like he's a toddler.
Exactly. They assume that because he is wearing that uniform, he must be mentally slow. Quinn talks about code switching. He has to adjust his vocabulary to fit in with his colleagues on the truck, simplifying things, using more local dialect, which is natural.
Sure.
But then he has to deal with these wealthy residents who treat him like he can't understand a complex sentence.
It's the ultimate undercover boss moment. He could debate EU policy with them in 3 different languages, but they're standing there talking to him like, "But bag here. Good boy."
It reveals how deep this societal bias runs.
Yeah.
We equate the uniform with the intellect. If you wear a suit, you have a brain. If you wear neon orange, you have a back.
Now, this brings us to what I think is the most explosive part of this deep dive. We've talked about the personal side, but let's talk about the political side. Section 4 of our deep dive here, the great disconnect. Because it's not just about social manners or dating apps. It's about how policy, the stuff written in those gray buildings in Brussels, actually lands on the real streets.
Quinn shares a story that took place during the 2025 election season. So political campaigns are everywhere. The radio in the truck cab is constantly playing debates. And the politicians and pundits are talking about these high-level concepts.
Give me examples. What are they discussing on the radio?
The Paris Climate Accords, nitrogen emission targets, the spreading sweat, which is the dispersal law for asylum seekers in the Netherlands.
Okay, so the big front page headlines.
What do you think the reaction is in the truck cab?
I mean, silence,
Anger.
pure confusion,
Yeah.
blank stares. The colleagues look at each other and literally asked if these were launch codes. Launch codes. Yeah. That is hilarious, but also incredibly terrifying.
It was complete gibberish to them. One colleague even asked, "Can we switch to a Dutch station?"
Wow.
Implying that the political language was so abstract, so academic, it didn't even register to him as his native language.
That is a devastating critique of modern politics. If the people who are supposed to vote for you think you're speaking Klingon, you have a massive problem.
It's what we call the technocratic void. The expert class frames policies in abstract academic terms. Sustainability goals, macroeconomic stability. These terms have zero resonance with the people who physically maintain the reality of the country. To a guy on a garbage truck, sustainability isn't a policy goal. It's, do I have to physically separate this plastic, and does it actually get recycled, or do they just burn it anyway?
So what do they talk about on the truck? If they aren't debating the Paris Accords, what actually matters to them?
Kitchen table issues, the real stuff, rising prices of groceries at the supermarket. And specifically, Quinn mentioned the fact that you now have to pay to use the toilet at the train station.
Wait, really? That came up in conversation?
Yes. And think about it. It's a very tangible decline in public service. I used to be able to pee for free. Now it costs me 70 cents every time. That is a daily metric of inflation and government failure that hits you literally in the gut.
It's specific, it's annoying, and it just feels like a ripoff.
Exactly. And there's a general sense among them that the rich ought to help out more. But interestingly, Quinn notes that their political allegiance is incredibly fluid.
This challenges the whole idea that voters have these fixed lifelong identities, right? That you are fundamentally a Labor voter or a conservative voter.
Yes, completely. Quinn observed that a colleague might fiercely support a left-wing party on Monday because they're angry about corporate greed or the price of the train toilet, but then on Friday, they might passionately support a right-wing populist party because they saw something on the street regarding immigration or crime that bothered them.
So it's based on mood, on immediate grievances.
It's based on reality. It's not ideological consistency. It's a direct reaction to their immediate physical environment. They aren't reading the 50-page party manifestos. They are looking at their shrinking paychecks and looking at the changes in their neighborhoods.
And where does Europe fit into this? The EU, the place where Quinn literally used to work.
It doesn't. To the garbage collectors, the EU simply does not exist. It is not a factor in their daily lives. Quinn notes that when high-level EU guests appear on talk shows people he literally used to have lunch with, the viewers in his current world tune out immediately. It's phantom politics to them. It's a TV show about a planet they will never visit.
But here's the flip side that I find so fascinating. The diplomats are blind to the street, but the garbage collector, he sees absolutely everything. Quinn argues that the garbage collector is basically an unwitting sociologist.
It makes perfect sense. You see the raw data of how people live. You see what they throw away. You see the demographic shifts that policymakers only see in spreadsheets 5 years later.
He gave a really specific example about migrant workers in housing, didn't he?
Right. This is what we call street-level data. How do you know a residential house is suddenly overcrowded with labor migrants? You don't need to wait for a municipal census. You look at the bins.
If there are 5 bins instead of 2.
Exactly. If there are extra bins outside a regular terrace house and maybe a car with Polish or Romanian license plates parked out front, you know that house is packed. You know there are maybe 10 people living in a standard 3-bedroom house.
The garbage collectors see this every single Tuesday.
They know exactly how the neighborhood is changing. They see the overcrowding. They see the consumption habits change. They see the poverty. They see the alcoholism via the glass recycling bin. They know the pulse of the town long before the municipality ever writes a report about it.
It's incredible. We have these 2 distinct groups, the map makers in the offices and the territory walkers on the trucks. And they are completely, hopelessly disconnected. The map makers don't know the territory, and the walkers don't have the map.
That is a perfect way to put it.
But how did we get here? This didn't just happen overnight. How did we get so severely separated?
Quinn and the interviewer, Talita, trace it all back to the root cause, the education split. And specifically, back to that age we mentioned earlier, 12 years old.
The CETO test.
It creates a permanent structural segregation. It's not just an academic split, it becomes a physical separation. Think about the logistics of a typical Dutch town. The gymnasium, the elite high school, is usually right in the nice city center or a wealthy suburb. The VMBO, the vocational school, is often pushed out to a different area, maybe near the industrial zone.
So they literally bike different routes every morning.
They bike different routes. They join different sports clubs. Their social circles diverge completely. Quinn mentions that eventually they just stop seeing each other at birthdays. It's like a slow-motion divorce of an entire generation.
And by the time they're 25, they inhabit parallel societies, Mars and Venus.
They don't date each other, thanks to the dating apps filtering them out. They don't work together. They don't live in the same neighborhoods. This creates the bubble. It's a total, comprehensive lack of social interaction between classes.
And the media just makes it worse. We have to talk about the media's role in this.
Absolutely. We touched on this briefly, but let's go deeper into the concept of talk show tokenism.
Oh, this makes my blood boil. You see it all the time on evening television.
When normal people, nurses, teachers, police officers, garbage collectors, are invited onto these talk shows, where are they seated?
In the audience, or at that little side table, the kids' table of the discussion.
Exactly. They are presented as the specimens. The host walks over with a microphone and says, "Tell us, how hard is it to pay your energy bill this month?" The person shares a painful personal anecdote. The audience claps politely.
And
then the host turns back to the main table, the grown-ups table, where the professors, the economists, and the politicians are sitting. And they say, "Professor, analyze what this man just said."
it strips them of all agency. It says to them, your lived experience is just raw data for us to study, not an actual opinion to be debated.
It creates a massive legitimacy crisis. If you don't ever see yourself represented seriously in media or politics, if you are always the victim or the colorful anecdote but never the leader or the expert, of course you tune out. Or worse.
And that brings us to the danger, Quinn's warning. Because this isn't just about hurt feelings or social awkwardness. This is about the fundamental stability of our society.
Quinn references Mark Boven's work on Diploma democracy here. If this gap isn't bridged, people detach entirely from democracy. Quinn senses a flammable undercurrent of resentment among his colleagues.
He used that exact word, flammable. That's a very strong word.
It implies that just a tiny spark could set it off.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to ignite anger when people feel perpetually unheard and undervalued. Remember the dating app rejection. That's deep personal rejection. Remember the slow talk from the villa owners. That's demeaning on a daily basis. That resentment builds up in the system. It's not just apathy. It's active frustration.
They feel like the system is actively laughing at them.
And historically speaking, when a very large segment of the working population feels humiliated by the elite class, that is a textbook recipe for radical populism or civil unrest.
So we've stared into the abyss here. What is the path forward? Because Quinn isn't just complaining. He actually has a vision. He's seen both sides, so he knows how to bridge them.
He proposes some very concrete solutions. First, representation. Real representation. We need to put practical workers on electoral lists and in actual ministerial positions.
Why shouldn't a former nurse be the Minister of Health?
Exactly. Why shouldn't a garbage collector have a significant say in environmental policy? They know vastly more about the reality of waste management than the consultants who write the white papers. We need to break this ingrained idea that you need a law degree to be a competent representative.
And second,
Educational reform, we need to critically delay the split. Stop forcing 12-year-olds into thinking versus doing boxes. Humans are both. A surgeon uses their hands. Is that manual labor? A mechanic uses their brain to diagnose a complex engine. Is that intellectual labor? The distinction is totally artificial and damaging. Keep the kids together longer. Let them mix.
And finally, valuing skills.
We urgently need to move away from degree-obsessed hiring. Quin's hack at the ministry proved that the degree is often completely irrelevant to the job. If we start hiring based on actual skills and capability rather than the lazy credential check, we open the doors to a huge pool of talent that is currently locked out.
It really makes you look at the world differently. I mean, just thinking about Quin's journey, from hearing the launch codes of the Paris Accords in a sterile office in Brussels to facing the reality of the morning trash route in Schagen.
The final takeaway for me from all this is that intelligence is entirely context-dependent. That's the key to understanding this. A diplomat is quote-unquote stupid on a garbage truck. They would miss the social cues, they would lack the physical awareness, they probably wouldn't survive the shift. Just as a garbage collector is treated as stupid in Brussels because they don't know the specific jargon, but we desperately need both types of intelligence to actually run a society.
We absolutely do. And it leaves us with a pretty provocative question to chew on.
If our political leaders only know the theory of the world, the spreadsheets, the reports, the academic models, but have never physically maintained it, are they actually qualified to rule?
Or are we being led by people who have the map but have never walked the territory?
That is the question we have to answer.
That is definitely something to think about the next time you put your bin on the curb. Huge thanks to the source material from Danui Weird and Talita Moose for that incredible conversation with Quin. And thank you for listening to this deep dive.
Go say hi to your garbage collector tomorrow. They probably know more about your neighborhood than you do.
Catch you next time.